1923's villain redemption was a surprise bright spot of Taylor Sheridan's final. Amid disappointing developments in 1923 Season 2's finale, Yellowstone screenwriter Taylor Sheridan's redemption of one of the prequel's most villainous characters was surprisingly one of the most satisfying parts. In a massive end to 1923 Season 2, Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklinner, finally arrives in Montana, helping to win the range war that breaks out upon his arrival. Spencer first helps Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford, take Donald Whitfield's, Timothy Dalton, men out at the train station in Livingston, and it's an explosive start to the tactical battle, which ends at the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch. After taking down the men Banner Creighton, Jerome Flynn recruited to attack Spencer at the train station, Spencer helps Cara Dutton, Helen Mirren, defeat the final wave of the militia attacking their homestead. Still, Spencer's triumph is tainted by the loss of his wife, Alexandra of Sussex, Julia Schlapfer, who dies of complications from hypothermia at the hospital in Bozeman. That said, there was another bittersweet element of the Dutton family's victory, involving their original 1923 adversary, and it was surprisingly one of the most efficacious and satisfying storylines of 1923 Season 2's finale. Banner Creighton redeemed himself in 1923 Season 2's finale, and his was one of the series' most fleshed-out storylines. In 1923 Season 1, Banner is a hard-working sheep herder desperate to maintain his livelihood during a difficult time. Ultimately, Banner's desperation causes him to act short-sighted in several ways in the first season, allowing his sheep to graze on another rancher's land and the Yellowstone Ranch, attacking the Dutton family after Jacob retaliates by hanging Banner from a tree. Still, despite his quest for vengeance and enlisting Whitfield in his war, Banner experiences a change. With his proximity to Whitfield in 1923 Season 2, Banner learns the extent of Donald's sadistic nature. As he grapples with Whitfield's actions, Banner realizes that while Jacob Dutton didn't care what happened to him, he wasn't the truly malicious person that his wealthy partner proved himself to be. Ultimately, realizing that siding with Whitfield isn't worth gaining what the mining tycoon has, Banner tries to make it out of Montana to give his family a new life without sacrificing his humanity. Still, Jacob stops him at the train station, saying he can't escape the war he started. Banner puts his family's security over everything, telling Jacob that he will stay if they can leave. At this moment between Dutton and Creighton, we see how aligned the ranchers are, both inclined to put their family's well-being above all else. Despite issuing Jacob a grave warning that Whitfield is just the first of many who will try to take his ranch, Banner saves Jacob from Clyde's, Brian Connell, gunshot. Then Creighton takes a bullet himself. Notwithstanding all the strife he'd caused the Duttons, watching Banner die was genuinely sad, proving he had one of 1923's most effective stories. While there were bright spots, few of the 1920s Duttons, if any, had a story as well-rounded and profound as Banner's. Despite massive moments for Spencer, many of the Dutton family members' storylines fizzled out in the finale amid Alex Dutton's fate. Despite its fleeting nature, even Alex and Spencer's reunion was rushed, especially after the horrible things that happened to Alex Dutton in 1923 on her journey to her partner. Considering Banner's death was contestably as visceral and shocking as Alex's, the villain had one of 1923's best stories, rivaling even the Duttons' most emotional segments. In a series known for its rugged landscapes, sharpshooting patriarchs, and gut-wrenching tragedy, Taylor Sheridan's 1923 carved a blood-soaked trail through the American West. Every character had a cross to bear, and most bore it while staring down a rifle barrel. But when the finale dropped, what caught viewers off guard wasn't a shootout or a twist of fate. It was the redemption arc of the last person anyone expected to soften, Banner Creighton. Banner, the Scottish sheepherder with a temper as fiery as the Montana sun, had long been positioned as the thorn in the Dutton family's side. From his thick brogue to his bitter resentment of landowners like Jacob Dutton, Banner embodied the fury of the working class in a world shifting out from under their boots. When he teamed up with corrupt businessmen and orchestrated ambushes against the Duttons, many viewers chalked him up as just another bullet-bound villain in Sheridan's ever-expanding universe of betrayal and justice. And yet, in the final act of 1923's first season, Sheridan did what he does best: appended expectations with a quiet, character-driven twist. It began with a look. Banner, no longer draped in arrogance, stood at the edge of a field he once claimed as a symbol of freedom and defiance. But instead of shouting threats or rallying fellow sheepherders, he watched a child, a boy, maybe 10, tending sheep with the same clumsy earnestness Banner once had. It wasn't his son. It was his sister's grandson, newly orphaned by the same land war that Banner helped ignite. The viewers saw it, the trembling of his lip, the tear he wiped away with a grimy glove. In that moment, Banner wasn't a caricature of vengeance. He was a man broken by his own fire, watching the future pay for his sins. In the penultimate episode, Sheridan laid the groundwork for Banner's reckoning. He was captured not in a blaze of gunfire, but in solitude, starving and delirious in the mountains. Rather than finish him off, Jacob Dutton, battered by his own tragedies, made a different call. He brought him back to the ranch. Some viewers were livid. Why keep him alive? Why extend mercy to a man who'd orchestrated killings? But 1923 wasn't about black and white justice. It was about survival, and the strange, twisted roots it grows in. Banner, confined to a cabin under watch, began to speak less like a rebel and more like a man realizing the battle was never his to win. "They told me I'd own the world," he rasped to Cara Dutton, who begrudgingly brought him soup. "All I did was burn my corner of it down." The real turning point came in the finale. A storm threatened the valley, and the sheepherders left behind had no way to move their flock to safety. Against the advice of nearly everyone, it was Banner who convinced Spencer Dutton, back from his odyssey across continents, to let him help. "I know the land," he said, "and I know the fools still out there. Let me make it right." It wasn't a clean act of redemption. He didn't throw himself in front of a bullet. He didn't confess to every crime. But he led the sheep, and the terrified children among them, to a ridge that would keep them safe from the flooding. He stood firm when hired guns came to finish the job he once started, and for the first time, Banner didn't run. He topped them down. When Spencer asked him later, sitting by the fire, why he changed, Banner only said, "Because someone had to." What made this redemption arc stand out was its subtlety. Sheridan didn't write Banner as a saint by the end. He was still rough, still haunted, still capable of cruelty. But he also showed that a man doesn't have to be good to try and do good. That even the most broken of us can hold a thread of grace, if only for a moment. Critics have called it one of Sheridan's most mature character turns, not because it was showy, but because it was human. In a world of absolutes, Banner's shift suggested there's still room for in-betweens. For fans who'd written Banner off as a one-note antagonist, the finale demanded a second look. Was he always evil? Or was he just a man crushed by systems that never made room for people like him? His alliance with Donald Whitfield wasn't born of greed, it was desperation. His rage wasn't just hatred, it was grief wrapped in arrogance. In a series where violence often begets violence, Banner's arc, however late, felt like a breath of nuance. Redemption didn't come with applause. It came with silence, a cold night, and a shared glance between former enemies who knew they were all just trying to survive the century. By the time the credits rolled, fans weren't cheering for Banner, but many were quietly grateful. In a series full of loss, revenge, and legacy, there was something radical about a man simply choosing to change, even if it came too late to undo the past.